So hello everybody and welcome to day 29 of Freedom from Anxiety in Uncertain Times. So the penultimate day for our little exploration. Can't believe we're at day 29 already. Can't believe how many people are still joining every day. So hello everybody that's here with me live. The private Facebook group is ready now for anybody that would like to come over there and join us there. And we have a few founding members already, and I'd love to see some more people come over, and as we try to get this group off the ground. So I'll put a comment in here as well afterwards, and there's a post on the HR with Heart, Reconnect with Heart page with a link to that for anybody that's interested. And if you're not interested, that's absolutely perfect as well. It's been a pleasure having you here, and I hope that you took some value from the 30 days. So, our topic for these 30 days is freedom from anxiety in uncertain times. So, as I said yesterday, it's time to start bringing this full circle. So, I want to bring us back to stress and anxiety today. It just seems to make sense to do that. There's been a lot of stress in 2020 for a lot of people, and it's become a very hot topic this year. And we've probably all had an experience of stress and anxiety or overwhelm at some point during this year. Now there's a real focus on it, and a focus on how much of an issue it is, but we're also starting to understand the impact that stress and anxiety have on people emotionally, psychologically, socially, and even physically. More and more we're starting to understand how stress and anxiety affects us in a physical way. Hi Rose, lovely to have you. Happy Sunday. So we're really starting to see the impact, and we're much more aware of it, but I guess the problem that I see is that there's still no real answer for it. And part of the problem is that there seems to be a conclusion now that stress and anxiety are a normal and natural byproduct, I suppose, of the fast and busy lives that we lead today. And guess what? I'm going to suggest that that's just another part of the innocent misunderstanding. Because if we buy into that, then that leads us down a road where there's nothing that we can do about it, because it's coming from outside of us. And it kind of leaves us with two options. One is to avoid it completely, so go live in the country, get a job that doesn't place too many demands on you, and, as I say, avoid all the things that circumstances, situations and people that trigger your feelings of stress and anxiety. So that's one option. And the other option seems to be manage your stress. And there's a huge amount of focus on stress management at the moment. So, there's yoga, there's meditation, there's breathing, there's taking a break, there's going out in nature. They're all wonderful things, but they're not the solution in the way that I like to view the world anyway. And, that's where we find all the strategies and the tools and the tips and the techniques and the advice, and all wonderful things, and all with the positive intention of helping us unload the stress that we now seem to see as a natural build-up, I suppose, of our lifestyles. So, by now I'm going to suggest that none of it is coming from your life or your life circumstances. It's a result of what's going on in our own mind. And the reason I'm suggesting this is that we experience stress as a feeling. And by now, on day 29, we know that our feelings are a reflection of the thoughts in our mind. But this is hard to see sometimes. Now, I know whenever I talk to people about stress or anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, anything of that nature, they immediately start talking about the job, the boss, the finances, the children going off in all different directions, the elderly parents, something that's all pointing to the busyness of their lives. And I guess I'm suggesting that you can be busy and be neutral, or busy and be joyful even, that you don't have to have the feeling of stress and anxiety just because you're busy. So that's maybe something to consider. Because if you really look at your own stress or your own anxiety, how do you know you're stressed and anxious? You know it because you feel it. So again, where do your feelings come from? So we know the answer to that question too. All feelings are a reflection of our thinking in any given moment. So as soon as you start to think about something that makes you feel anxious, you're going to start feeling more anxious, because that's how it works. Now, let me give me an example of this. Work is a classic one. We probably all know somebody that will tell you that, by Sunday afternoon or early Sunday evening, they're starting to feel anxious and stressed about work, not going to work on Monday, and everything that's going to happen in work on Monday, even though they're not at work. Now, we also know people, and a lot of people, that will report that they got the Friday feeling. And, by mid-morning, lunchtime, or early afternoon on Friday, you're not feeling half as stressed as you were going in on Friday morning, maybe. And isn't it interesting that we think the stress is coming from the work, or the people at work, or the workload, or something about the work. And we get stressed when we're not at work. But we can be at work on Friday and not be stressed at all. So I guess that's what I'm inviting you to get a bit curious about. So we don't feel stress unless we think about it. And if you're not having stressful thoughts, you're not having stressful feelings. And if you're not having anxious thoughts, then you're not having anxious feelings. Now, once you realize this, so what's the benefit, you might ask? Once you see that, you can deal with it in a different way. Because once you see that that's what's going on, you don't have to avoid it anymore, and you don't have to manage it anymore when it shows up. You can simply address it at its origin. You hear? Because it boils down to the relationship that you have with a thought. And as human beings, we have the free will and the freedom to choose how we relate to any thought that we have. And I guess that's what I'm pointing to every day. So think about having a feeling of being hungry. Just to talk about this, how we relate to our thoughts. So you might be in the middle of doing something, and you have a thought that you're hungry. Now, you may have been hungry for the last half an hour, but until you actually had the thought that you were hungry, you didn't have any awareness or realization that hunger was there. Now, once you have that awareness, you can focus on the thought that you're hungry and zoom in on it, and you can get hungrier and hungrier, and you can get more and more desperate to have something to eat, and you can get totally distracted from whatever it was that you were doing. Or, when you have the thought that you're hungry and you're in the middle of doing something, you can think, I'm not going to think about that right now, I'm just going to finish what I'm doing, and I'll come back to it later. And then it's gone. And even though you may still be biologically hungry, because you've had the feeling and the awareness of hunger, you're not going to feel it again until you start thinking about it again. So that's kind of where the freedom comes in to choose how we're going to relate to any thought. We can choose to zoom in and pick up and engage and manage, or we can choose to step back and stay engaged with what we're already doing. So the feeling of stress and anxiety is created in exactly the same way. It's created by thought. And the more and more that you think about the stress or anxious thought, the stronger the feeling gets. And the more it kind of sticks around in the forefront of your mind. And the less you think about it, the more it kind of just comes and goes. So another example of this would be a deadline. So I often talk to people, that have deadlines looming, and they're thinking about the deadline, they're worrying about the deadline, and the closer the deadline gets, the more pressure that person feels. And there comes a point where the deadline gets so close that it's time to do the work. And what's interesting is that when we reach that point where it's time to stop worrying and thinking, and it's time to just do the work, the anxious thinking goes away, the pressure goes away, and the stress goes away. Because once we start doing the work, we stop thinking about it. It's very simple. And when the deadline is over, we feel this huge relief because the deadline is over. But the relief is because we don't have to actually think about the deadline anymore. Thinking is gone, the relief comes in, the spaciousness opens up, and we're back in a neutral mind. And the mind settles back into a place of clarity and ease as we get on with the work. So, the thing that gets us in trouble is the buying into the fact that we have to worry about things, that we have to think about things, that if we have a lot on our mind, that it's important that we keep thinking about all of these things, because if we don't keep thinking about them, they won't get done. And it's that kind of compulsion, I suppose, in the sense of urgency that comes with that thinking, that can really amplify the feelings of anxiety and stress. So, if we think that way, it leads us to a lot of agitated type of thinking, and it's the agitated thinking that causes the feelings of stress and anxiety in our body. Now, when we pull back the curtain behind the feelings, you're going to see that there's a whole pile of agitated thinking in there, having a party, having a field day, and a great old time. And guess who's whipping it all up? Guess who's feeding it with more thought? Guess who's focusing in on it and making a fuss of it? We are. And realizing that really allows us to consider stepping back and maybe looking at it a little differently. So when you do step back, it's very easy to see that the more you think in an agitated way, the more agitated you're going to feel. And that when you're not thinking in an agitated way, that your mind kind of settles, and it's free to settle, because you're not in there trying to control everything anymore. So instead of having to manage your stress, or deal with it, or cope with it, you can start to consider that it's just a byproduct of your thinking. It's just an experience that you're having of your own thinking, and that it's not really helpful. Now, we also already know that anytime we try to do anything important and we have too much thinking on our mind, that gets in our way. Because the agitated thinking is a mental distraction. So when you really see that the stressful thinking that's creating the stressful feelings is coming from you, and if you have thoughts that don't go in one ear and out the other, like the hunger thought, it's because you continue to think about them. When you see that that's what's causing the chronic anxiety and the chronic stress. And that's really helpful. Now, you can do it at home, you can do it at work, you can do it when you're out with your friends. The circumstances and the places and the people aren't what's important. It has nothing to do with your family, your job, your finances, your children, how busy you are, anything like that. And once you start to see that, you'll be more open to considering that these are things that you don't need to get so involved with, and that you don't need to put so much of your time and your energy into these thoughts. And the more you start to see this, the more they kind of fall into the background. And what comes into the foreground more and more is that clarity of mind and that ease, which is what we're all looking for. Now, when I'm talking about agitated thinking, I'm speaking about the kind of thinking that makes you go, and then the reaction comes. Whatever that reaction is for you. I know my own flavour, but we kind of do this, and then we dive in. So just start noticing that for yourself. And we're already experimenting here. So we're 30 days almost into our little experiment. So I'm hoping at this point that you're starting to see that your own levels of stress and anxiety can vary according to what's going on inside in your own mind. And the more we can see this, the more things start to happen that we couldn't even imagine. You know, I talked about the work scenario. You suddenly go home from work and you're not thinking about it anymore because you've seen that it's not helpful, and you've seen that all the awful feelings you have in the evening when you go home are being whipped up internally. So we just stop doing that, and that's where we get the benefit. You start to see that it's a variable when you start to see that it's a byproduct of your thinking and how you think and how you relate to the thoughts that you have. And then you can have all the same life experiences, and you can still have all the stressful thoughts coming in and out, because we're not in control of the thoughts that come and go, but we do have the freedom to choose how we relate to them and how we engage with them, and if we're going to focus in on them and fuss about them and get involved with them and whip them up. That's our choice. It's just that when we don't know this, we have no hope of seeing it. But now, after these 4 weeks, I'm really hoping that you're starting to get glimpses of this. So the more you experiment with it and the more you learn about states of mind, you discover that stress is actually more optional than you might have originally thought. I know it's certainly been that way for me, and that's been my experience. The stressful thoughts still come regularly, but when I don't grab on, they fall into the background, and as they do, that clarity of mind, that spaciousness, and my wisdom from my true nature can come through in that easy and graceful way that I keep speaking about. So we all have the ability to have clarity of mind and ease in challenging situations and in uncertain times. And it's a whole lot easier to achieve than you ever thought possible. So that's what I'm inviting you to reflect on today. So that's it. Happy Sunday. As I said, I'll put a link to the group in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you for our final day tomorrow. So have a lovely Sunday, whatever you do. Love to all. See you tomorrow.